rich. You know, so we ain't really never had no old money. We got a whole lot of new money though.
Young Metro don't trust you, I'm gonna shoot you.
Hey! Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot box. Cooking on your bitch, yeah, that. Cooking up in the crock pot. We came from nothing to something.
Last night I was thinking, how do we get our energy from our food?
I literally have no idea. Let me Google it. It says it's this thing called cellular respiration.
What?
It says here that cellular respiration has 4 main parts: glycolysis, oxidation of pyruvate, Krebs cycle, or CAX, and oxidative phosphorylation. And in oxidative phosphorylation, it says it has the electron transport chain and chemiosmosis inside of it.
Wait, I am so confused. Let's go upstairs and explain more to me.
Alright, here we go. So basically, this is a complete overview of cellular respiration. It happens in the mitochondria, and it starts with glycolysis, and then it goes to the grooming phase, which is also called oxidation of pyruvate. Then it goes to the CAX cycle and oxidative phosphorylation. To start this process, you're going to need 2 ATP and a glucose. No oxygen is going to be needed. So the first step is getting your 6-carbon glucose and adding an ATP. That'll add a phosphorus to the one side. You'll use your next ATP to add a phosphorus to the other side. Then the molecules are going to be split up, and there's going to be a 3-carbon and 1 phosphorus. You're going to add an NAD plus to get an NADH, and a phosphorus is going to be added, and then you're going to have 3-carbon and 2 phosphorus. You're going to add an ADP, which is going to make another ATP. You're going to add a phosphorus, which is going to add it to the 3-carbon molecule. You're then going to take away a water and take away an ADP, and you're going to end up with your pyruvate. Your pyruvate is the 2 3-carbon molecules. You're going to get a net gain of 2 ATP, and this also happens in the cytoplasm. The next step is oxidation of pyruvate, which is also called the grooming phase. You start with your 3-carbon pyruvate, and you take away a carbon dioxide, add an NAD plus to make an NADH. You add your coenzyme A, and you with an acetyl-CoA. Your acetyl-CoA is an enzyme that carries the carbon over to the CAX cycle, but you need to remember that each glucose molecule has 2 pyruvates, so you're going to do this process twice. This happens in the mitochondria's matrix. This happens in the matrix of the mitochondria. You throw in your acetyl-CoA into the cycle. Your CoA enzyme will leave right away. You're going to have your 6-carbon molecule. You're going to put in an NAD plus to get the NADH. Carbon dioxide will leave, and then you will just have a 5-carbon molecule. The same thing will happen until you get your 4-carbon molecule. You're then going to add FAD to get FADH2, and you're going to get another 4-carbon molecule when you add that, but it's not the correct one, so you're then going to add 3 NAD plus to get 3 NADH, and you're going to get your correct 4-carbon molecule. NADH and FADH2 are electron transporters that will carry the electrons to the electron transport chain. Next, we have oxidative phosphorylation. It's going to start with the NADH dropping off an electron at the first integral protein and the FADH dropping it off at the second or the third because it isn't as strong. The electrons are going to go through and pass on the chain till they get to the oxygen, and that is the final electron acceptor. Then it's going to merge with the hydrogens on the matrix side and form water. The hydrogens are going to go through the integral proteins to get to the intermembrane space. Since there's a lot of hydrogens going through the integral proteins, there's going to become a hydrogen gradient on the intermembrane space. The hydrogens are going to want to diffuse back, so they're going to go through the ATP synthase, and then the ADP is going to form with a hydrogen at the end to make lots of ATP. And that's a basic overview of cellular respiration.
Wow, that's so much.
It's not that bad once you study it all.
Are you missing anything?
Oh my goodness, the secret formula! First, you have the C6H12O2, which is glucose, and that is used in glycolysis, plus 6O2, which is 6 oxygen, and that's used in oxyphos. That yields over to 6CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and that's used in the CAX cycle. Then you have 6H2O, which is water, and that's used in oxyphos, plus ATP, and that is made during oxyphosphorylation.
Baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and close.
So wait, if we can get our food from cellular respiration, how do plants get theirs?
Well, actually, Mel, plants are autotrophs and they produce their own food using light from the sun.
Wait, what's that called?
Photosynthesis.
Does that have one of those fancy equations too?
Definitely. The equation for photosynthesis is 6CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and it deals most likely with the Calvin system, and then plus 6H2O deals mostly with light reactions, and then that yields light, and that is in the light reactions. Then C6H12O6, which is glucose, and that is mostly in the Calvin cycle, plus 6O2, which is oxygen, and that is mostly in the light reactions. A rough overview of photosynthesis is when it rains, the roots get the water and push it up through the stem and the xylem, which is a tissue. And then we have the leaves, which capture sunlight and is the main organ. Then we have the holes on the leaves, which is called the stomata. CO2 gets through there and oxygen or O2 gets out. Then we have the mesophyll cells. They have tons of chloroplasts in it, where photosynthesis happens. The chloroplasts inside of leaves have an outer membrane and inner membrane. They have a granum, which is a stack of thylakoids. A thylakoid is one of those green things. They have a grana, which is all of the stacks of thylakoids, and then stroma, which is the liquid in the chloroplast. Inside of a thylakoid, there are pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, and they trap light. So the light comes in and they bounce around to each chlorophyll B, and then they go to chlorophyll A, where the electrons get excited, and they go to the primary electron acceptor, which accepts the electrons and then sends them to the electron transport chain. Out of the pigments, chlorophyll A is the dominant one and participates directly in light reactions, and it traps blue, violet, and red lights. Chlorophyll B is secondly dominant, and it takes light energy and passes it to chlorophyll A, and it absorbs blue and orange light. And they both reflect green and yellow. In the thylakoid membrane, there are two photosystems with the pigments chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B in them, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. Photosystem 2 comes first on the electron transport chain in front of photosystem 1. As the electrons are moving through the electron transport chain, chemiosmosis is happening and ATP is being made, but at the end there is no net gain of ATP. When the electrons reach photosystem 1, they go to the final electron acceptor, NADP+, then it becomes NADPH, and then photosystem 2 needs more electrons, and it gets them from water. And then inside photosystem 2, there is an oxidizing enzyme that takes 2 electrons from water and gives it to chlorophyll A. H+ ions from the water stay in the thylakoid space. Oxygen leaves as a product through the stomata. Photosystem 1 needs electrons, and it gets them from photosystem 2 again. During this light reaction, H+ ions, while the electrons are moving through the electron transport chain, they move from the stroma to the thylakoid space, and then they want to come back to the stroma, and they do that through ATP synthase, and it creates a ton of ATP. There is no net gain of ATP, though, even though a ton is getting made through ATP synthase. It all gets used and put back into the cycle. Now we're on to the Calvin cycle, which happens in the stroma. You need CO2, ATP, and NADPH. Those were both just made in light reactions. So you take 3 carbon dioxide molecules and an enzyme called ribisco. So now you have 3 6-carbon molecules, but that gets split into 6 3-carbon molecules. So you use 6 ATP for each of those 6 molecules. NADPH turns into NADP+. Now you have 6 G3P. That means you have 18 carbons, but you really only need 15 for the cycle, so 1 G3P leaves. Right now in the cycle there is 5 3-carbon molecules, but you need 3 5-carbon molecules, so you add 3 ATP, and then you get back to ribisco. But you need to go through the Calvin cycle twice in order to make glucose as your end product. After the Calvin system runs through twice, 18 ATP gets used, 12 NADPH gets used, 6 carbon get used.